What if the prayer you've been too scared to whisper is the one God's been waiting to answer? There's a conversation you've been avoiding with him, a question you dare not ask, a fear you won't name out loud. But what if your silence is the only thing standing between you and breakthrough? Stay with me for the next 10 minutes because we're going to talk about the prayers that terrify us, the ones we think might anger God, disappoint him, or reveal too much of our broken hearts. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll understand why these scary prayers might be the most sacred ones you ever pray. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever started to pray, felt the words forming in your heart, and then stopped yourself? Maybe it was a prayer that felt too honest, too raw, too angry, too desperate. Maybe you wanted to ask God why he let that thing happen, why he didn't show up when you needed him most, why the people who hurt you seem blessed while you're barely holding on. Or perhaps it's a different kind of scary prayer. Maybe you're afraid to ask for what you truly want because you're terrified he'll say no, or worse, he'll say yes and then take it away just to test you. Maybe you're afraid to pray for healing because you've prayed before and nothing changed. Maybe you're afraid to ask him if he's even real because what if the silence answers for him? I see you, and more importantly, God sees you, and he's not afraid of your afraid prayers. Here's what happens when we don't pray the prayers we're afraid to pray. We create distance between ourselves and God. Not because he's moved away, but because we've built a wall of politeness, of religious performance, of acceptable prayers that sound good but don't touch the bleeding parts of our souls. We pray the safe prayers. Bless this food. Help me at work. Be with my family. All good prayers, all needed prayers. But meanwhile, the real storm rages inside us. The doubt, the anger, the confusion, the desperation. And we think if we just keep those things hidden, if we just smile through our worship songs and nod through our Bible studies, eventually they'll go away. But they don't go away. They grow, they fester, they become bitterness or depression or cynicism or that quiet voice that whispers, God doesn't really care about you specifically. Maybe he's real for other people, but not for you. And the tragic irony is this. While you're hiding your heart from God to protect yourself, you're actually starving yourself of the intimacy he's offering. Because God doesn't want your performance, he wants your presence, your real, messy, scared, angry, confused presence. If this is resonating with you right now, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Let this be a reminder that you're not alone in your struggle, and you're not the only one who needs to hear these truths over and over again. Let me tell you about some prayers that people were afraid to pray, but they prayed them anyway. Job sat in ashes, covered in sores, and told God, I wish I'd never been born. He demanded answers. He questioned God's justice. And you know what? God called Job righteous. Not because Job had perfect theology, but because Job brought his real heart to a real God. David wrote in the Psalms, Why have you forgotten me? Why must I go about mourning? He accused God of sleeping on the job, of hiding his face, of abandoning him. Yet God called David a man after his own heart. Even Jesus in the garden before his crucifixion prayed, Father, if there's any other way, please take this cup from me. The Son of God asked for an alternative to God's plan, and the Father didn't rebuke him. He sent angels to strengthen him. Do you see the pattern? The people closest to God's heart were the ones who brought him their real, unfiltered reality, their fear, their pain, their doubt, their desperate wishes for things to be different. God is not fragile. He's not going to be shocked by your honesty. He's not going to abandon you for asking hard questions. In fact, the opposite is true. When you finally pray the prayer you're afraid to pray, you're actually moving toward him, not away from him. So why are we so scared? I think there are a few reasons. First, we're afraid God will be angry. We've been taught, maybe in church, maybe in childhood, that questioning God is rebellion, that doubt is sin, that if we're truly faithful, we should just trust and never struggle. But that's not biblical faith. That's religious performance. Biblical faith wrestles, it asks, it laments, it even argues with God sometimes, and God welcomes it because it's engagement, not abandonment. Second, we're afraid of the answer. What if we ask God why he allowed our trauma and he doesn't give us a satisfying answer? What if we beg him for healing and he says, not yet? What if we ask him to take away our loneliness and we wake up alone again tomorrow? The unknown answer feels more dangerous than the unasked question. And third, we're afraid to face our own hearts. Sometimes the prayer we're afraid to pray isn't really about God's response. It's about admitting to ourselves how hurt we are, how angry we are, how lost we feel. Praying it out loud makes it real, and reality is terrifying when you've been surviving on denial. But here's the truth that will set you free.
God already knows. He already sees. He's already there in the mess you're trying to hide, and he's waiting for you to let him in, not with your Sunday morning voice, but with your 3 a.m. breakdown voice. I can't promise you that when you pray the prayer you're afraid to pray, everything will change overnight. I can't promise instant healing or immediate answers or sudden clarity, but I can promise you this: intimacy with God begins at the end of pretending. When you finally say, "God, I don't understand why you let this happen to me," you stop carrying the weight alone. When you finally admit, "God, I'm not sure I trust you anymore," you open the door for him to rebuild that trust on solid ground, not on shallow optimism. When you finally confess, "God, I'm afraid you're not listening," you give him space to show you that he's been there all along, listening to even the prayers you couldn't say. Here's what I've learned. The prayers you're afraid to pray are often the prayers that lead to breakthrough, not because God only responds to desperation, but because desperation makes us finally get honest, and honesty is the language of relationship. You see, God isn't interested in managing your image. He's interested in healing your heart, and he can't heal what you won't reveal. Maybe your scary prayer is, "God, I don't even know if I believe anymore." Pray it. He's strong enough for your doubt. Maybe it's, "God, I'm so angry at you I can barely breathe." Pray it. He's big enough for your anger. Maybe it's, "God, please don't take them from me," even though you're afraid that praying it means you don't have faith. Pray it anyway. He knows your heart. Maybe it's, "God, I'm exhausted from trying to be enough. I don't know how to keep going." Pray it. He's been waiting to hear you admit you need him.
So here's my challenge to you today. Before this video ends, before you scroll to the next thing, before you go back to your daily routine, take 60 seconds. 60 seconds of complete honesty with God. You don't have to say it out loud if you're not ready. You can whisper it in your mind. You can write it down, but pray the prayer you're afraid to pray. Bring him the question you've been avoiding. Confess the doubt you've been carrying. Ask for the thing you're terrified to want. And then, here's the hardest part, wait. Not for an audible voice from heaven, not for a miracle in the next 5 minutes, but wait with an open heart. Pay attention. Notice what changes inside you when you stop pretending. Notice how God meets you not with condemnation, but with compassion. Because that's who he is. He's the God who drew near to doubting Thomas and said, "Touch my scars." He's the God who pursued runaway Jonah even in rebellion. He's the God who wept with Mary and Martha, even though he was about to raise Lazarus. He's the God who looked at a thief dying on a cross and said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." He's not afraid of your afraid prayers. He's been waiting for them. If this message has touched something in your heart, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, without giving details if they're too personal, just tell me, "I prayed the scary prayer." Let that be your declaration. Let it be a moment you mark. Because I believe God is going to meet you in that honesty in ways you can't even imagine yet. And if you found value in this video, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs permission to be honest with God. Sometimes we all need a reminder that our brokenness is not a barrier to his presence. It's an invitation into deeper intimacy with him. Thank you for trusting me with these 10 minutes. Thank you for having the courage to listen. And thank you for being willing to take the risk of radical honesty with the God who loves you more than you can comprehend. Remember, the prayer you're afraid to pray might be the beginning of the story God has been wanting to write with you all along. Don't let fear steal your breakthrough. Bring him everything, even the scary stuff, especially the scary stuff. God bless you. I'll see you in the next video.